this second lecture, we're going to be talking about drugs and self-harm. As you can see, there are various drugs that can be used to self-harm with. These include heroin, cocaine, amphetamines, cannabinoids, opium, methamphetamine, club drugs, dissociative drugs, hallucinogens, other compounds. Each will be discussed individually as we go through the lecture. How these are administered. There are various forms of administration when taking drugs. These are smoking, intravenously, skin application, there's patches and things like that where you actually apply it, breathed in, swallowed or snorted. These are only some of the ways the drugs can be administered to yourself and can be administered to actually using for self-harm. Cannabinoids basically come under a subgroup of section C in the cannabis, marijuana, hashish and so forth. Cannabinoids have also probably the most commonly known of the actual drug-related usage that you actually find on the streets. Recreational drugs are quite easy to be found, and you can find them in prisons, schools, and also in people's public houses. You can have them sold inside pubs as well. These drugs have very, very debilitating situations on the individual. Some of the actual commonly known side effects for drugs are reduced brain function. Sometimes this can be you lose some of their actual methodologies of actually being able to process information. Now this processing of information helps people to understand that basically everything is okay, they can be happy, they can be sad. But most self-harmers who use cannabis are only using it for one purpose. And we have to make this point 100% clear before we go any further, that anyone who uses any drugs in any shape, manner or form for actually self-harming will actually only do it to harm themselves. Those that use drugs to actually enhance their feelings, their anger and everything else are not self-harming. We must make this point 100% clear. These people do not self-harm. They are using this to actually commit crimes, abuse, and do other things to other people. A self-harmer will only harm themselves. There is no other way around saying this. A self-harmer will only do this to themselves. Opioids. Opioids are very, very strong drugs, and these come in the form of heroin or opium. These drugs are very professional, and they're made very professionally. Some of the actual ingredients that are put into them to form them together can actually induce self-harm. So we have to be realised that, basically with opioids you will find, if they're smoking it or snorting it, but basically what you will see is that they will actually turn round and they will do something to themselves. But they can also do other things as well, like cutting, bumming, which obviously is destroying the actual cells around the skin, causing it to scab, and then once they're scabbed, they sit there and they do scabbing. Scabbing is actually pulling off the actual scab itself, making it bleed once more. Now, making it bleed once more means it could actually become infected. Once it becomes infected, you actually have to get that person to the hospital as soon as possible. Sometimes they can even lose limbs by doing this. Some of the side effects of opioids are constipation, hepatitis, HIV, and fatal overdose. We continue, we now have stimulants. Stimulants are completely different. These are snorted, injected and smoked. They're called methamphetamines. Cocaine is one of these. Cocaine can induce reduced appetite, irritability and paranoia. if someone becomes paranoid around you and you see these things happening and you think to yourself, that's unlike that person, it could well be the fact that these are actually self-harming themselves. This can happen in schools. So we have to realise that, even though some of these things you would consider adult recreational drugs, basically what they do in actual fact can actually be given to children. These children then go on to self-harm themselves in other forms and in other ways that you want to try and avoid as much as possible. One of the main problems with opioids and stimulants is dental problems. These dental problems means that they lose teeth, they get weight loss, excessive weight loss, which must not be associated with anything to do with eating disorders, which we will talk about later in the course. Club drugs. Club drugs are like ecstasy, GBH, Valium. These have health risks that are so intense that they can have seizures and even falling into a coma. These drugs surely should not be allowed to be anywhere near any children, but these children can actually get hold of them. They will self-harm, you may not see it. When we go through descaling methods, you will see that even if you take away the pocket money of these people who self-harm in this fashion, these children, adults, it doesn't make any difference who they are, they will basically find another way of getting these drugs. You could in actual fact take away one thing and cause them to go out and commit crimes to actually do this. We want to avoid everything possible and help our self-harmers. The whole idea of this course is actually to turn around and help you to help others. Dissociative drugs. Dissociative drugs are like magic mint, ketamine, as Valium. They render the user to a state of disassociation. So basically, if you see somebody lying on the street, it has been known, and you can see them and they don't look like they're anywhere near anyone else, and they don't look like there's anything wrong with them, it could well be that they are disassociative. They do have aggressive patterns, they do have hallucinations. They believe everyone's fighting against each other, that someone's following them. Hallucinations can run through most of these drugs. They're either injected or snorted, and basically self-harm in this fashion can be very, very detrimental to the individual. If, for instance, you actually find someone you think could be self-harming and basically is not is taking these drugs and they seem aggressive and everything else, like you see the aggressive patterns in the self-harmer, be aware, and always aware. Some of these people have goal-orientated feelings. Some of these people are only doing these things because then they go out and they commit these crimes. They steal. They do horrendous crimes to other people. They are not self-harmers. A self-harmer will only harm themselves. They will never ever harm anyone else. Hallucinogenics. Hallucinogenics, as we've said before, these make you believe things are happening around you. You can find hallucinogenics in certain other substances, but as we go through legal eyes, you will see that where these two actually marry together. Health risks include flashbacks. Now, this flashback could happen when they're inside the family environment, inside indoors, out in public. They could have a flashback in public. If you find someone that you love is actually going back and having flashbacks, there is a chance, a very, very small chance, that these people are self-harming. My 100% urgency to you is to actually go out and seek medical advice immediately. Don't just take it from me, take it from the rest of the actual research and everything else, and go out and find these people some help. This course is designed to help you to spot who self-harms and who does not. Once again, these things, LSD and all this, can be found, unfortunately, inside prisons. And then you get mania, paranoia, and basically these things are like, are done to themselves. They are non-suicidal, self-injurious behaviours. That is what self-harm is. They have no intention of hurting anyone else except themselves. We must make this clear. Because this says drugs and self-harm, it doesn't mean that everyone that takes drugs self-harms. If you wish to find out more about this lecture and about the module and everything else and what's going on, I suggest you go to the Centre of Addiction. At the Centre of Addiction, you can actually find a whole wealth of information that you can actually download and use yourself. You can also download these slides. They're there for you to use however you want to use them, and basically you will be able to then use these for other purposes, your own purposes, your own work if you want to teach and train other people to find answers and cures to self-harm. Remember it though, there is no such thing as a cure for self-harm. These are the journal articles that we used in this particular lecture. In the next lecture we will look at legal highs. Some of these legal highs were actually mentioned on the Centre for Addiction's website, basically as illegal drugs. I put it to you that basically these are legal drugs because of how easy they are, to be actually found and used on a regularly daily basis. Anyone who uses these drugs or anything else such as these, and also the actual legal highs, which we will talk about in the next lecture, you will find basically they can be readily available. And some of these things, although under European international law, they are illegal to actually use in such fashion, people do use them. Thanks very much for listening.
Am I stopping this? Or?